VikesNow, I am Dustin Baker. We're here Tuesday, February 13th, 4 weeks away from free agency, less than 4 weeks if you count legal tampering on that Monday, March 11th. So we're in full off-season mode, trying to determine how these Vikings will build the roster in an off-season where they claim the intent is to shed rebuild from competitive rebuild, which means this off-season has to be pretty damn glorious, efficient, and really nail the personnel. We're going to have almost complete coaching continuity. Marcus Dixon came over from the Broncos to be the defensive line coach, but other than that, it's going to be the same coaches, but probably some revamped players. So, in the spirit of the offseason and all of the post-Super Bowl mock drafts that have popped up, it has dawned on me that there's only, in my estimation, one team that let's say the Vikings want to get real splashy and sexy and trade up the board for their quarterback of the future. I think there's only really one team that provides that path, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So foremost, for anybody that's new here or new to Vikings fandom, the entire offseason, as it stands right now, it starts with the Kirk Cousins decision. Cousins is a free agent for the first time since 2018, or he could be. In theory, the Vikings could re-sign him for 1 to 3 years, and you'd have a reunion. And we should figure out if that's going to happen within the next 3 weeks. I guess in theory, it could go all the way up to March 11th for a verdict. But if the Vikings do not re-sign Cousins, who can probably fetch $45 million per season on his next contract, they're virtually guaranteed to draft a quarterback in the draft, because it wouldn't feel very smart to say, well, Nick Mullins is our QB1, or, hey, we're signing Ryan Tannehill for this. They're probably going to swing for the solutions to end their competitive rebuild. That's what rebuilds involve, are rookie quarterbacks, the ones that you've identified and scouted as your guy. So if Cousins does not return to the Vikings, or even if he does, it's probably time to draft a quarterback. So some housekeeping. The Vikings have not drafted a quarterback in the first round or second round in 10 years. The last guy was Teddy Bridgewater, and he started off real promising and then was injured in the summer of 2016. And for the Vikings purposes, we never truly saw him again. He became kind of a journeyman quarterback with, Saints and Broncos, Dolphins, Lions last year. And then he retired about 3 weeks ago, and he's going to coach his high school alma mater football team in Miami. Also, the Vikings have never spent a top 10 draft pick on a quarterback. So if they do effectuate a large trade up the draft board, it will be their first time ever spending a top 10 pick on a quarterback. Now, if the Vikings chill at number 11, say, we don't need to do any of that King's ransom shit, they probably will be able to draft J.J. McCarthy, unless he gets talked into the top 10, Michael Penix from Washington, or Bo Nix from Oregon. Those guys organically will probably be available at 11. It's just whether or not, you as the fan, do you think those three are as semi-ironclad of a solution as Caleb Williams, Drake May, or Jaden Daniels? I've said a couple times on the show, and I'll probably say it every episode until the draft, this guy enjoys Drake May and thinks that if they're going to swing for the fences in the draft with a big trade, that they should target Drake May. I wouldn't be upset by Jaden Daniels, and I just assume that Caleb Williams probably won't be gettable because he'll go first overall, and the Bears own that pick, and I just don't see the Vikings trading with the Bears to get Caleb Williams. But with no further ado, I believe the New England Patriots are the most realistic team that could barter with these Vikings if the Vikings have aspirations at all to trade up. The New England Patriots have new management for the first time since, 1999? Bill Belichick will not be the head coach for a draft or in September. He's taken a year off, it seems, biding his time for the next job. And Jared Mayo is the linebacker, or he was the linebackers coach that took over and is now the head coach. So they have, new thinkers, and that leads me to believe that they wouldn't necessarily be opposed to trading with the Vikings or another team and accumulating, a huge stockpile of draft capital to fill out their roster. So the first caveat here is this isn't the Bill Belichick Patriots that you're saying, Belichick will probably just stand pat and, draft some dude you've never really heard of 2 rounds early and let the chips fall. The Patriots, for the last however many years, 10 or so, notoriously aren't very good drafters. That will probably all change now. The Belichick's out of the way. But my biggest point of evidence that would say, hey, I think these Patriots will trade up is, unlike the Commanders, the Patriots have a lot of roster holes. Now the Commanders have them as 2. You don't get to the number 2 overall pick without having roster holes. But the Patriots have several, and they have the new, storefront with Jared Mayo. Right now, based on, I guess depending on how you look at it, the Patriots need a quarterback. We assume that Mac Jones or Bailey Zapp isn't the long-term solution. So yeah, they could stand. I could be wrong. Whole world could be wrong. They stick where they are and draft May or Daniels. But they need a quarterback. They also need, if they want to stay on par with the rest of the NFL, they need 2 wide receivers. You can scrap just one. They're going to need 2 wide receivers. And then heading into free agency, they need 2 offensive tackles. This is kind of like, if you go through the Vikings right now need 2 edge rushers. Realistically, it may only be 1 if they re-signed Danielle Hunter. But going into this offseason, they need 1 edge rusher, the Patriots, and they need 2 offensive tackles. So if you go down the list of Patriots needs before free agency, before the draft, they need a quarterback, 2 wide receivers, 2 offensive tackles, and probably another edge rusher. That's 6 players at really important spots. And I think if they analyze their war room and what their 3rd overall pick could fetch, you can trade that to the Vikings and probably really fill out your asset sheet and say, you know what? We're gonna take this trade and then fill out a bunch of roster spots along the way. I think that the price, if the Vikings at number 11 want to get to the Patriots spot at number 3, it's probably 2 firsts and 2 seconds. I believe that would do the trick. You might have to throw a little deal sweeten in there. You have a pick swap or something hey, the Vikings are giving you their 6th and, their 4th. Something, a crossroads like that. But I believe it'll be 2 firsts and 2 seconds. It's up to you to decide if that is a reasonable price to pay for Jaden Daniels, probably, or Drake May if he falls. But then here's what the Patriots could do. If you could keep in mind this wish list for them, a quarterback, 2 wide receivers, 2 offensive tackles, and an edge rusher, they can stand pat at the Vikings' 11th pick, and then they could explore J.J. McCarthy or Michael Penix or Bo Nix. So it's not like the Patriots are going to, oh, hey, we're trading our 3rd overall pick. That means we can't get a quarterback. No, you'd drop down 8 spots, and then they would have the pick of the litter at, J.J. McCarthy if they believe in him. So I think that with the Patriots' team-building aspirations, they have a lot more needs than the Vikings do at the moment, and it might be best served for them to do business with the Vikings. 4 picks for the price of 1. They can shoot, swing for the fences on those 4 draft picks, whereas the Vikings right now are probably a quarterback away from, being decent, assuming Kevin O'Connell knows how to tutor a new quarterback. I don't think Chicago is a realistic, let's say you just love Caleb Williams, all the power to you. I don't think that Chicago is a realistic team for the Vikings to trade with, mainly because you're going to have to pay an NFC North tax. It's stupid, but that's how it goes. If the Bears are you know what, we have decided that Justin Fields is our future, so we are trading the 1st overall pick to the highest bidder. Well, if it's the pick your poison, whatever team, if it's the Steelers that want to trade up and with the Bears, they're going to get a cheaper price than the Vikings. The Vikings would probably have to send something godforsaken 3 firsts, 3 seconds, and a 3rd, something really uncouth like that to the Bears, and I just don't see the Vikings front office doing business at that price. And then Washington, the same Patriots logic that I've presented might apply to them. I just look at their roster and I see a little bit more foundation than what the Patriots have, especially at those important spots. Now, if the Patriots, if they are in play, let's say I'm correct, and it's 2 firsts and 2 seconds, boom, the Vikings can trade up, then we'll be on this waiting game between now and the draft, or draft night itself is Is it Drake May or is it Jaden Daniels? We haven't seen the combine yet. That's coming up here in a couple weeks. And sometimes there's a lot of movement that comes out of those. If Jaden Daniels runs some outlandish 40, he could springboard into, number 2, and then Drake May could go to the Vikings. But the takeaway is, no matter what, trading into the top 3 would guarantee that the Vikings would get Caleb Williams, Drake May, or Jaden Daniels, who are considered the blue chip prospects in this draft. So I think that is, if you're wondering, why don't they just stand pat and pick McCarthy? Then you don't have to trade anything. It's because the 3 guys I just listed off are considered more sure things than McCarthy. There's a lot of debate on whether or not McCarthy is, just a Brock Purdy-like winner at Michigan. He's got a great system there, and of course he wins games. I think McCarthy is better than that, and I will not be disappointed if the Vikings stick and pick at number 11. But I have this undying fascination with Drake May. And if he falls to 3, my, oh my, I hope the Vikings spring for it. So this, without seeing the NFL Combine, it's a little tricky to speculate, which quarterback will they want and trade up for. But I do believe that the Patriots provide the best path. They have the roster needs to be enticed by a big trade from the Vikings or another quarterback-needy team. And I think it's more so than Washington because when you compare, I challenge you to go on your favorite depth chart website and look at Washington, look at New England. Now, New England's defense is always pretty sturdy, probably because Belichick isn't about to let his defense suck. Washington, they traded away a bunch of their defensive line there at the Halloween deadline last year. So the Washington Commanders defense can stand to get better. But on the whole, I think the Redskins have, the Commanders have a little bit better infrastructure than the Patriots. So yeah, I believe that's where we're at. If the Vikings do want to make this trade, and we will be calling for this ad nauseum if Kirk Cousins indeed signs with the Falcons or the Patriots or with the Steelers. That's another one that could be in the mix. That's another thing. If Cousins is a free agent, he can just outright sign with the Patriots, and then they wouldn't need a quarterback, which means they would be probably trying to offload that 3rd pick unless they wanted to stand pat and draft Marvin Harrison. So remember the team, the New England Patriots. I think that is the most realistic shot if you want these Vikings to trade up on draft night into the top 3. Tomorrow, we will have Eli Corbett on, talking with Josh Fry and I. He's the guy that puts out all the really, really sweet Vikings graphics, and he does them for the NFL on the whole, for Amazon and such. But at heart, he's a Vikings fan, and we're going to pick his brain on Vikings predictions for the offseason, whether that's the Cousins extension or not, Danielle Hunter extension or not, the amount of Jefferson's extension, who the Vikings will target in the draft. We're going to get all of Eli Corbett's takes tomorrow, and we'll see you then. Skol, baby.